Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey. And Eric, you had to revise your travel itinerary for next year, right?
Jim, I was always looking for a reason to go to Philadelphia. It's been a few years. Actually, last time I went to Philadelphia, I actually worked for Comcast. So that's where their corporate headquarters.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
You're doing some good television commercials and advertising there, but that was the last time I was in Philadelphia. But we have reason to go there. Another Comcast reason to go there, right?
We do. The news just broke literally days ago about Universal Theme Parks, the exhibition, which is going to be get underway at the Franklin Institute in fact, Valentine's Day next year, February 14th. Right. And this is kind of a big deal because this is the first time that the Universal Parks have done something like this. I mean, it's an 18,000 foot traveling exhibit, going to have 8 different themed galleries, more than 100 artifacts from the parks. In addition,
that's so cool.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've told the story here on this podcast previously about Jason Sorrell, who wrote all of those wonderful books for the Disney theme parks. And then he went over to work for Universal Creative. And I remember going up to him at a press event and to the effect of, Jason, you're here. Where are the Universal books? And he's like, man, I'm trying. You know, I take the proposals to management and it never makes it any further along. But for me to have, are we talking about on this show the Epic Universe series over on Peacock that's starting later this month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a bit later. That starts later. Yeah.
Okay. But this is what's interesting to me, that this is a significant change for Universal Parks and Experiences to go from, we just do good stuff. We don't need books. We don't need exhibits. We don't need documentaries. We're not Disney. And suddenly, hey, we got documentaries. We got exhibits. You know, so where's the book?
Right. No, Jim, this is pretty exciting. When you sent this over, I was like, yeah, immediately. And you were like, we got a road trip going on. So, and we got tipped off, right?
We did by Charm City. If I got the name right,
Charm City on Twitter, handle Balti Nerdist. So maybe Baltimore Nerdist. I don't know. But either way, we got tagged and both of us were very intrigued.
No, absolutely. But more to the point, Balti Nerdist also proposed that we do a meetup at the Franklin Institute. And, I'm sorry, I think for my stomach, it's, the effect of, we're in Philly. We got to go get cheesesteaks. We got to go to the, Reading Terminal Market. But no, absolutely. And in fact, what's kind of killing me here, Eric, is I was supposed to have gone to the Franklin Institute like a year ago, because this was where that Disney 100 exhibit stopped.
Yeah.
But it was one of these exhibits that had time tickets, and Nancy and I were driving down from New Hampshire, and we just caught in traffic, and we lost our window. I never got in there. So the irony is, didn't get there for Disney, but I'm going to be there for Universal. And again, we will do a meetup. Happy to meet, at the very least, Balti Nerdist. We're there. We're there for you.
There we go. Jim, we'll race. Well, how long does it take you? It's about a 6-hour drive for me.
Yeah, 7, 8. Again, it depends on Jersey Turnpike. Always gets me. But anyway, folks.
All right, we're there.
We're there. More to the point, we're here today, and there's lots of news to cover, so we need to get to that. But before we do that, we need to acknowledge our sponsor here. Planning a next adventure? Let the experts at Be Our Guest Vacations take care of the details. As a platinum-level earmarked travel agency, they provide top-tier concierge service for trips to Universal Orlando, Universal Hollywood, the Disney parks, cruise, and more. So get started today at beourguestvacations.com and be sure to mention that the Epic Universal podcast sent you. So, anyway, Eric, what sort of news did you dig up for this week's show?
Well, Jim, we just had the 4th of July, so obviously the next holiday in everybody's book is Halloween, right? There's lots of memes out on the internet right now. Is this like fireworks, and then the next slide is basically pumpkins, and and that seems to be correct for when it comes to at least Central Florida and Orlando and that. We're getting more information when it comes to Halloween Horror Nights. So I learned something, and for all those out there that complain that I don't know much about the Universal yet, I'm still learning. I learned today that there's a difference between a haunted house and a scare zone. Yeah. I didn't know the difference, and we have our first scare zone announced, and I was thinking to myself, didn't they announce a lot of these? No, they announced a lot of haunted houses. So, Jim, did you see the Origins of Horror scare zone coming to Orlando?
I did not. Do they mention where this one is going to be located in the park? Because I see from the description, it's set in a decaying conservatory. The zone features twisted vines, monstrous crows, and gothic gargoyles. Does that sound like something it could drop in the park's Central Park area?
Well, they're starting to construct this. So I do know there was one outside. There's like a structure that is being outside the animal show.
Oh, the animal actors outside thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to go, and that's kind of adjacent to the park there. So they didn't necessarily mention where exactly it was, but we do know that the entire theme of this year, they did mention earlier, it was going to be this conservatory kind of theme. So the promo art shows very much the same: spider webs, thorns, gargoyles, even a raven perched on a cracked window.
And I have to say that, don't get me wrong, I apologize for you getting nicked on the haunted houses versus scare zone thing. But no, the scare zones are always that much more intriguing because it's such a bigger space to fill, where, a house, you can do little tight rooms. I mean, you can go big. You're doing throughput, whereas these things have to work from both directions because, guests are coming and going through these spaces as they move around the park. There's often some really, really great design in these things.
Yeah, and I think it's more up my alley, truthfully. Like, we were at Hershey Park during Halloween, and they had some type of Halloween type thing, and we had to walk through some of these zones. We didn't get to any of the houses because that, of course, like, that's more jump scare to me and stuff. And I love seeing character actors roaming and that kind of set. So like I'm all 4 scare zones, and believe me, I will try the haunted houses and see how good my heart's working. But for the most part, I'm glad to know now there is a difference, and it only took 60 episodes for me to learn.
Come on, life is all about learning new things, so you'll learn something
and getting yelled at on the internet.
It's also important. Okay, and now speaking of Halloween Horror Night, we and haunted houses, we learned of yet another haunted house, right?
Yeah, and I'm learning new things as well. So Terrifier Haunted House was announced. So this is Art the Clown. So Jim, are you familiar with the Terrifier franchise?
Yeah, no, and I've lived a good long life. Okay, I on the other hand, it's like it's this thing is supposed to include scenes that have chaos in the clown cafe and a revolting bathroom. Wow, what a surprise! Just off of the clown cafe. Oh God.
Yeah.
All right. The show description that you found here, or what is it? Guests enter Art, and I guess that's the character in this.
Art is the clown. So I did look it up because once again, this is, I love Halloween Horror Nights for the theme and so forth, but I'm just not a horror guy. So like, I like this kind of stuff, but I'm not even watching horror films. So it turns out Terrifier is a 2016 indie film, indie slasher film about Art the Clown. So he is a silent, sadistic killer. So I did watch a couple of trailers just to see what's up.
Okay.
I'm not scared of clowns. Never really. That's not my thing. So I am scared of a clown with a chainsaw dressed as Santa Claus. So I will avoid that. But it does turn out this was a film made, and they said they made it for under $55,000, and it became like a cult hit. So they're bringing that into Universal, and I guess if you want to be chased around by a clown, I don't know if he'll be dressed as Santa Claus for this one. But nonetheless, that is the latest that house announced. And now we have, I think, 8 or 9 houses. So it's the jam packed. If you want to head to Halloween Horror Nights, you better get your tickets.
Well, speaking of which, though, that you bring up the admissions material, and of course, there's Halloween Horror Nights Express, the upgrades, but they're now sold out. Really, the frequent free passes? Wow.
So yeah, looking online, Frequent Fear Plus, and Ultimate Frequent Fear. Those are all sold out right now for Orlando. So for those not aware, the Frequent Fear Pass is entry for most Sunday through Thursday nights, plus the first weekend. The Fear Plus Pass is everything in the Frequent Fear Pass, plus Fridays. And then the Ultimate is access every single night, including Saturdays. So super fans, this is pretty much skipping the lines, right?
Yeah,
this is like skipping the lines. And from what I understand, these lines for these houses get pretty long, right?
They do. And again, this is one of the reasons why I both enjoy and don't like going to the press event, because, that night, what they will do is they will march you, and your lovely Universal rep makes this possible. They will march you through every single house there, and you will also visit all of the scare zones. You'll even see the big dance show. And I've mentioned this on previous editions of the podcast. The problem is, by about house 3, you learn the vocabulary. So it's like, okay, this is the thing that's, I'm supposed to see. I walk into a room that's supposed to get my attention, which means the teenager in makeup with the chainsaw, it comes out of the doorway over here. And that's the thing. Whereas if you do it like a normal human being, where you're in a line for an hour or two, you forget. Then you enter the house and
yeah.
So, again, it's important to appreciate the craft of these, because people work hard on them. But wow, so they're all sold out already.
Listen, man, I always knew when I started dabbling with Universal, when people talk about these Halloween Horror Nights, they are diehards, and this sounds like you buy one of these, you're going multiple days, and you're having good times and really enjoying it. So there still is, guests can still buy Express with the Rush of Fear Pass, and that is valid for the first 18 nights, and a standard single night Halloween Horror Night ticket. So you can still do it, but for the ones that are locals or vloggers or people that just plan on camping out in Orlando for the month, looks like your main things are all sold out. So
I would love to talk with somebody who actually does that, who goes back to Halloween Horror Nights multiple times. What's that like? When you know a house, and face it, when you have that sort of pass, you're going to houses multiple times.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, Jim, funny thing is, we've got a couple emails from listener of the show, Scott, who is a big fan of Halloween Horror Nights. And maybe we can talk with him, because he is mentioned multiple times, because he knows that I'm not necessarily big into it. He's like, anytime you want to talk Halloween Horror Nights, he's our guy. So maybe I'll reach out and see if he can hook us up. So Scott, if you're listening, give us an email.
Okay. Well, all right. Now, pivoting to, again, you don't necessarily have to go to a park to enjoy a park, because we have, on Peacock, starting next week, right on the 24th, we have a documentary series.
This is right up my alley, Jim. If you like books, I love these documentaries. I watch all the old ones, and this is what we're all looking for. So, Epic Ride, the story of Universal Theme Parks, the 3-part docuseries is on Peacock. So if you haven't had Peacock, go sign up now and watch this next week. But it is they're basically saying there's going to be some access to rare archival footage, which I love. And then there'll be some interviews with directors, producers, A-list celebrities. So I'm guessing some of those that were at the opening. And just generally, I'm guessing it's the making of the theme park, which, if Bioreconstruct is not on this, I will argue and say they missed out there, because that's been my documentary so far.
Yeah. What is the line from the Willy Loman? Attention must be paid. So, all right. And speaking of paying attention, if you manage to be at the Universal Parks next week, keep an eye out. Someone you know quite well from being in your car with you as you travel along will be there. Eric, you and the family are going to be down in Orlando for a week or so. But is there a specific day when you guys are going to be at Universal? Or
well, we are buying our Epic tickets for the 24th. It just so certain happens. You can watch that, get all enthused. You come and spot us. I will be. This will be the first time we already made it there once, but this will be the first time that everyone has access to it. So I'll be very intrigued to see how the lines are, and if I can take my Pizza Moon box to the hotel room.
All right. Well, okay, that covers the news for this week, folks. Now, continuing on from our feature series we started earlier this month, we're gonna double back on Jaws 2 and talk about how all the issues involved with producing that sequel to the original Steven Spielberg film. But first, this.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks. Smooth, bright, deliciously crafted. Introducing Starbucks Sansera Blend, their smoothest, brightest coffee yet. It's a new kind of light roast, one that's packed with so much flavor, it shines no matter how you brew it. So go ahead and try it hot, iced, black, or with a splash of creamer. Visit athome.starbucks.com/Sansera-blend-coffee to bring Starbucks Sansera Blend home.
And we're back. All right, Eric. On the heels of last week's feature, the one where we started talking about Jaws 2 and how, for a time, producer David Brown and Richard D. Zanuck were toying with the idea of building the sequel around, again, the Steven Spielberg film. There was the story that was told as part of that movie, the USS Indianapolis tragedy. That was a heavy cruiser that was sunk by a Japanese sub, July of 1945, after the Indianapolis had delivered Little Boy, and that was the atomic bomb that got dropped in Hiroshima on August 6th of that same year. Anyway, the crew of the USS Indianapolis delivered Little Boy to Tinian Island, which I accidentally said on last week's show was in the Philippines. Well, Keith B., loyal listener to this podcast, wrote in to let me know I got that part of the story wrong. Where Tinian Island is located, well, here, let me share what Keith sent along. Tinian is not an island in the Philippines. In fact, it's far to the east, and I know this because I was in the Army Reserve in service out there in the Pacific. And if you look at Google Maps, in the Southwest Pacific, you'll find Guam, which is U.S. territory. In fact, Guam is the first part of the United States to the west of the international date line, which is why one of Guam's mottos is where America's day begins. And then northeast of Guam is the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands, the CNMI. So you go north of Guam, first island in the CNMI, tiny island of Rota, Small, itty-bitty population, best known, again, this is Keith dogging, for making a teeny, spicy little chili pepper that's used to, again, make sauces that are sometimes referred to as Rota Tabasco. So very good. Would pick up jars when he went to Guam. And then finally, also small as Tinian Island. And worth noting that this is where the huge B-29 bomber fleet that was used to bombard Japan during World War II was based. And their war, and still are, 4 east-west runways on the northern end of the island, overgrown with vegetation at this point, easy to locate. And last time that Keith was on the island was back in 94, 95, part of a training exercise when he was based in Alaska. So anyway, a geography lesson in the middle of a theme park podcast.
That's right.
We'll take it, folks. All right. Anyway, moving on with our story of Jaws 2, which, we heard from other people, by the way. In fact, we heard from friends of John D. Hancock, who is the original director of Jaws 2, who got removed from that project just 1 month into shooting. And by the way, John is still with us, 86 years old, and as recently as 2009, he was still directing. Mind you, this was a theater production of Noises Off, but it was being presented on Cape Cod at the Wellfleet Fleet Theater, which, by the way, is 60 miles as the crow flies from where he was shooting Jaws 2 on Martha's Vineyard back in 77. Anyway, I forgive the adult language here, folks, but this friend of Mr. Hancock volunteered that John got screwed by Universal on Jaws 2. The complaints from the folks back at the studio about how dark his Jaws sequel was, it's like John was shooting the script that they gave him to shoot. And again, very interesting to bring this up because Universal had a tough time coming up with a workable script for Jaws 2. And since The Godfather had arrived in theaters in 72 and its sequel, Godfather 2 in 74, had done big box office and won all sorts of awards, well, that's supposedly why Universal decided to include a subplot in Jaws 2 that it involved a mob. And here's the thing, Eric, scenes were shot by Mr. Hancock on Martha's Vineyard that supposedly showed empty storefronts on Amity Island with the idea it's been 4 years since the first shark attack and tourism hasn't recovered yet. And so Mayor Vaughn, the only way he could think to turn this situation around is he reaches out to the mob and cuts a deal that they'll build a hotel with a casino on the island.
Right.
And so this is why, as word starts to get out about a second shark now prowling the waters off of Amity Island, this is why Mayor Vaughn and developer Lenny Peterson are especially determined to keep this news quiet. And Peterson, he's the mob guy, because he wants his hotel and casino to open. And Vaughn, more to the point, is trying to keep this noise because he doesn't want the mob to kill him for going to them and persuading them to spend money on Amity Island. Interesting side note for you soap fans out there. Lenny Peterson in Jaws 2 was played by Joseph Mascolo, who is very good at playing villains and mobsters. He played Stefano DiMara on NBC's Days of Our Lives from 1982 to 2016.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
That is a long time, but he was the reigning villain. In fact, on that show, the only reason he stopped playing Stefano is that we lost him that same year, 2016, at the age of 87. Anyway, Hancock is shooting all of these scenes on Martha's Vineyard, which then set up the new resort, the mafia plotline, and the folks back in Hollywood are looking at the dailies, and it's like, this doesn't look like a summer blockbuster. Where's the shark? But the other issue that Hancock reportedly had was actress Lorraine Gary. She played Police Chief Martin Brody's wife, Ellen. in the original Jaws. And where this gets interesting is Lorraine, when she signed to do the Steven Spielberg movie, the first Jaws, she thought that Universal was going to do a straight to the screen adaptation of the book version of Peter Benchley's Jaws, which a lot of people today forget had this subplot where Ellen, behind her husband back, has this affair with Matt Hooper, the Richard Dreyfuss character.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lorraine read the book, and she's really looking forward to making the original Jaws, because she's going to get to play these juicy scenes. And whereas Spielberg, who's historically a little squeamish when it comes to sex scenes, more to the point, he actually wanted the audience to like the Richard Dreyfuss character. He felt that Matt Hooper was going to be crucial for a lot of the humor once they got out on the Orca. So Spielberg just cuts that entire subplot out of the movie, and now Lorraine Gray is playing the faithful and loving wife of Police Chief Martin Brody, which is kind of boring.
Well, yeah, and Jim, over the last couple of weeks, because of Jaws being out for 50 some years or so, there's been a lot of podcasts. So actually, I've listened to 3, 4, 5 different making ofs, and it's really funny. They all talk about how he's kind of a jerk, or he's not liked in the book, but he's good in the movie. So it's kind of funny that there's such a drastic change there. But makes sense.
Yeah. Well, anyway, now we jump ahead to 1976, and Jaws 2 is in development. And because Robert Shaw's Quint character, died in the first film, and Richard Dreyfuss wasn't going to be able to make Jaws 2 because he's off with Spielberg making Close Encounters, Gray thought, this is beautiful. They have to beef up my part. I'm one of the only characters left over from Jaws 1. So, Lorraine, when she's on the set of Jaws 2, supposedly starts sharing her own ideas about what Ellen Brody should be doing in Jaws 2. Like maybe climb into a boat and go help her husband while he's off battling the shark. and evidently John D. Hancock at this point says, over my dead body, which is a mistake, because as it turns out, Lorraine Gray's husband was Sidney Sheinberg. Who was,
my.
Oh, yeah.
Why would you? Oh, my. He didn't say that aloud, right? He didn't say over my dead body aloud. Come on.
The reason Eric is making that noise is he recognizes that Sidney was the president and CEO of Universal Pictures at that time. All right. And so Lorraine evidently picks up the phone and complains to her husband about, I made the suggestion and I was told to pound sand. And almost immediately after that, Eric, this is when the executives back in Hollywood begin finding fault with the footage that's coming in, and it's just, and who supposedly is the loudest, saying the footage too dark, it's too slow, that doesn't look like a summer blockbuster. Sidney Sheinberg. So anyway, month into shooting, Universal reps flew to Martha's Vineyard on a Friday in June of 77. Very next day, John D. Hancock is fired and production of Jaws 2 is shut down. So what happens next? We will discuss that after this.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
Not all meals are created equal. For instance, breakfast has the spicy egg McMuffin for a limited time, and lunch doesn't. McDonald's breakfast comes first. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Let's break. And we're back. Okay, so again, we're just going to start with the obvious, Eric. The state of Massachusetts was not happy when it learned that production of Jaws 2 had suddenly shut down out on Martha's Vineyard after just 4 weeks. They thought that this Universal Pictures production was just going to be like the original Jaws, that it would wind up shooting for months and months, and all of that sweet, sweet overtime dough would then be spent in the Bay State and fattening up wallets all over Massachusetts. But what was especially concerning to the folks in Massachusetts was that production of Jaws 2 wasn't pausing while Universal searched for a new director. But the film was reportedly shutting down and pulling out of Massachusetts entirely. But here's the interesting thing, Erica. We talked earlier in the show about they struggled to find a workable script. Firing Hancock and the time they spent looking for a new director gave Universal the time it needed to seriously overhaul the script to Jaws 2. And during this time, a lot of that mob stuff we mentioned, that got cut out. And what was previously perceived as a pretty slow and dark opening section of the film got overhauled. A lot more humor got added, more action. In fact, Carl Gottlieb, who had been on set during the production of the original Jaws and had been Steven Spielberg's go-to guy when it's like, this scene needs to be funnier, this needs to be faster, he wound up retooling the script to Jaws 2. But that said, it still takes Gottlieb a couple of weeks to get a draft that everyone likes. So now it's July. And here's the thing. Universal Pictures has already told exhibitors that Jaws 2 would be opening in their theaters on June 16th, 1978. And a teeny bit of the footage that John D. Hancock had shot from the earlier version could still be used for the film. But here's the thing. There's folks who work on the estimating side of Universal Pictures. They take a look at Gottlieb's rewrite of Jaws 2, and they're like, oof. All right, this is going to take at least 4 months to shoot, more likely 5. And if you go back to Massachusetts and then attempt to complete this movie, first of all, you're not restarting production till August. And
right.
then you're shooting all the way into November, maybe even December, when it's cold. And
I was going to say, you're from the Northeast, Jim. Is it wonderful swimming weather in November?
Oh, never mind that. It's also daylight savings time. So
right.
by 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're losing daylight. So you won't have as long shooting days when you're trying to compute this thing. So the hard reality is Jaws 2 cannot go back to Massachusetts. Production now has to move someplace where they can be shooting out in the ocean without freezing in November, December, which means Florida. To be specific, Navarre Beach on the Florida Panhandle. Production of Jaws 2 starts up there on August 1st. And as it turns out, the folks in Universal's estimating office were right on the money. Shooting of the sequel to the original Jaws took longer than 4 months. In fact, they didn't wrap production in Florida till December 22nd, 1977. I get literally 3 days before Christmas.
Well, they could have got home in time.
Yeah, but Universal also knew because they had previously locked in and announced that release date for Jaws, that they had to work fast here. They could not afford any additional delays. So rather than turning this Jaws sequel over to an experienced film director, they opted instead to go with somebody who directed a lot of TV shows for Universal Studio, and that was Jeannot Zwark. Now, Jeannot had been working at Universal since the early 1960s, and he first come to management's attention when he proposed a new drama for the television side of the studio, which, by the way, eventually became Ironside, that long-running NBC hit that starred Raymond Burr. And on the heels of that, Jeannot was later allowed to actually start directing episodes of that TV show, and those did so well that Zwark then became Universal's go-to guy for directing episodes of hour-long television dramas like Rockford Files, Kojak, even the Columbo TV movies. And more to the point, a year or so earlier, Jeannot had directed a feature-length horror film for Paramount called Bug. They offered involved a certain amount of special effects. So, as the story was explained to me, the executives at Universal followed this train of thought. It's like, look, Jeannot's a known quantity. He's worked for us for years, directing television dramas, so we know he can work fast. And he made that Bug movie for Paramount, so we know he can handle effects movies. So, by process of elimination, all right, Zwart, that's our guy. He's going to direct Jaws 2. And where this especially gets interesting is, Zwart and Carl Gottlieb. And again, Carl's the guy who punched up the script for the original Jaws, and he's also the one who did the overhaul of the screenplay for Jaws 2. They had a meeting of the minds, and they're like, we cannot repeat this trick that Steven used in the original Jaws, which is to keep the shark largely off screen for the first 2/3 of the movie. And by the way, just a reminder, Spielberg didn't do that by choice. He did that because the shark rarely worked the way it was supposed to. So Jeannot and Carl decide that Jaws 2 is now going to be a classic Universal monsters movie, which means you are going to see this fearsome creature in this movie right from the beginning. And you do. I mean, the credits are barely over. And this great white kills 2 divers who are taking photographs underwater of the sunken wreckage of the Orca. And again, that's the boat from the first Jaws movie. And then he comes back over and over the course of Jaws 2, eating lots and lots of people. Let's tick him off here, folks. He first eats those 2 divers, then the water skier and the boat driver. Then he takes giant bites out of killer whale, and he frightens another diver into having an embolism. He eats one teenager who's competing in a boat race, kills a helicopter pilot before eating a second teenager. So that's 6 whole people, plus big chunks of a killer whale. and whereas the shark in the original Jaws movie, well, he eats 4 people. Though it's strongly implied that he also separated Ben Gardner's head from his shoulders. If I ate that much, I wouldn't be able to swim. I'd have to lie down and take a nap. And isn't that the old rule that you can't go in the water for an hour after you eat? So how does that work in regard to sharks?
They must not get cramps, Jim. That's the thing. There's no cramps with sharks. But yeah, that's a pretty big workload he's working up there.
There we go. All right. So anyway, Jaws 2 isn't an especially artful or, let's be honest here, well-made sequel. But, as we mentioned on last week's show, did have a great poster. And again, great white shark breaching, coming out of the water right behind a woman in a yellow bikini who's water skiing. And it did have a great catchphrase, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. And Universal was actually able to get Jaws 2 into theaters, just as they previously told exhibitors that they would. And that was June 16, 1978. But it also delivered the goods. It sold $102 million worth of tickets in North America, worldwide box office 208, which was a legitimate blockbuster in the late 70s. That said, the executives at Universal who actually set the sequel to the original Jaws in motion, they knew the truth. And remember, last week's show, we talked about how that Steven Spielberg movie, when it started shooting in Martha's Vineyard, it had a budget of just $4 million. And by the time the original Jaws finished production, more than 100 days behind schedule, the cost of making that movie had risen to over $9 million. And what's interesting is the rule of thumb back then, Eric, was that, and again, we're talking Hollywood of the 70s, was that sequels did not ever make as much money as the original film. So you always went into making a sequel with the idea that you wanted to spend less on making that movie. So going into production of Jaws 2, the thinking at Universal was, look, we're not paying for Robert Shaw. Likewise, Richard Dreyfuss. So this time around, make a Jaws movie, let's shoot for 6. That's 2/3 of what Spielberg ended up spending on the first film in this franchise. That isn't what happened. Because between changing shooting locations in Massachusetts, firing John D. Hancock, and replacing him with Jeannot Zwart, basically having to throw out the entire first month of filming on the movie, the rushed rewrites, what the folks at Universal will admit publicly to about what the sequel to Jaws cost is $20 million. I've been told, Eric, the real number is $30 million. So the studio spent 5 times what they had originally budgeted for Jaws 2 to get it into theaters for June 16th, 1978, which is why at this point, the executives of Universal were, let's not do that again. No more Jaws sequels. Are we agreed? Which brings us to the question, how then did we get Jaws 3D? We will discuss that on next week's Epic Universal podcast.
Oh, Jim, but isn't it always like, I don't know, like Jaws 2 was probably still getting a lot of the box office just from the good word of Jaws 1, right? Because nobody knew. I mean, there probably wasn't as easy to know that there were problems with this film going out there, right? I mean, if you're just a normal person in the 70s, you're just like, oh, you might even have thought Steven Spielberg made it, you know?
Well, what was kind of interesting, I mean, again, I'm old. I remember this. And more to the point, I was living in Massachusetts at the time. When production shut down on Jaws 2, this was a big deal. Because again, remember, this was the first blockbuster. This was the first film to ever sell more than $100 million worth of tickets. And this was the thing. It's like, you're shutting down. And the folks at, especially out at Martha's Vineyard, I mean, they had already spent $2 million just getting set up to shoot production. Right. And the notion of we're shutting down, we're packing it in. And then for a month, everybody sort of stood around, what happens now? And it's like, they're going to Florida? I mean, this did in fact dog the film. But what's intriguing is during that period, between when they shut down in June, they shut down, it started up again in August, Mr. Spielberg reached out and offered to help. And again, that's another story we'll share next week.
All right, good. Well, that's thank you for that, Jim. I'm not sure if I want to watch Jaws more now that there's the shark in it. I will tell you, I'm slowly but surely, I did watch an entire scene of Jaws on Facebook the other day. Somebody was talking about the iconic like zoom pan from the beach, Yes. And so I watched that whole scene. I didn't have the sound on. And then I realized I'm not necessarily scared of the shark. I think I'm just I still have trauma from being a child and thinking about watching that film because I'm like, I can see the shark now. I can watch these things. I'm like, but I still get like goosebumps when I think about the music and so forth. That's the trauma. It's me being a little kid watching and me thinking of that little kid. So we're getting closer, Jim. We're getting closer to me in an IMAX screen in 4K on August 19th.
All right. And we'll be adjusting his medication between here and there. All right. Well, anyway, that's going to do it for this week for the Epic Universal podcast. So, but as always, as from our Balti Nerd and Keith B, we always enjoy hearing from you folks. And if you have anything you want to share or suggestions about stuff we could cover on the show, you can reach out to us. In fact, Eric, where can the nice folks find you?
I think I'm pretty much Eric Hersey at all social platforms, so you can reach out there, and we'll be happy to chat back and forth. What about you, Jim?
Well, all right. You can find me on X and Instagram at Jim Hill Media and over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that's gonna do it for this week's edition of the Epic Universal Podcast. I want to thank you all for listening and stick around to find out what's coming up later this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode. And if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa or animation and movie news. Please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lorraine Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about podcasts and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.